Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're having a good day. That was absolutely an amazing panel, and I guarantee you're going to want to stay for the next one. So my name is Maeve Campbell. I'm a climate journalist from London, and I'm pleased to be hosting this next session where we're posing the question, is nature an economic choice? So nature has an inherent, unquantifiable worth. We obviously rely on trees, we rely on plants, air, soil for our very existence. But in the capitalist world that we live in, the question is, do we even recognize that worth? So the ecosystem provides us with services. Bees pollinate our crops, plants clean our air, they store carbon, and all of these services contribute trillions to the global economy. But looking at nature in economic terms might seem like a paradox, but it's crucial if we're going to save this absolutely indispensable resource. So the question is, how do you transform priceless ecosystems into assets? Before we move on to our panel in a few minutes, please welcome Jamie Batho from the Land Banking Group to go into a bit more detail.
Hello, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay? Is that all right? Amazing. Hello, my name's Jamie. Thank you. I think the first thing to say is thank you for having me, and thank you to the Change Now team for putting us in a place like this. I think when you're in grand places, the worst thing that can happen is that we all feel a little bit more grand. So thank you for fueling our egos. Now, we're here to talk about the question that Maeve just posed, is nature an economic choice? And I think that's a very philosophical question on one hand. I think it's also a very practical question on the other hand. So let me first start with a little bit of blundering philosophy, and then we'll try and land it somewhere practical. I'm not from Paris, as you can probably hear, and I think like most tourists that come to Paris, when you're walking through the streets of Paris, you're forced to reckon with what this city has been at the center of for the last few centuries. You walk past places like the Hôtel de Ville and you see the Renaissance. You walk past the Panthéon and you think the Enlightenment. And you walk past the Place de la Bastille and you think the Revolution. And I'm sure there's many people speaking here who are going to try and paint pictures between the revolution and whatever they're talking about. So let me try and do that, and then you can tell me later who did it best. But I think there are some distinct correlations, similarities between the French Revolution and our economic relationship with nature. Back then, it was the revolution was a rejection of a social and economic system, and a system that pushed people and pushed the majority of people to the edges of society, taxed their labor, taxed their wealth, and treated them as the bank that will keep on paying. And now we do the same thing with nature. We have an economy now where we've decided the only way for us to create wealth, for us to fuel our economy, is by pushing nature and the people that steward nature to the edges of our economy to extract, and treat nature as the bank that will always pay. And just as back then, the first and second estates, the clergy and the nobility, couldn't have imagined a reason why that system might snap for them, nor could we have imagined a reason why our system might snap. Except we could have always predicted this. We knew that it was going to end up in the situation we are now. We've had scientists and NGOs shouting at us for decades, telling us we need to change or the system will snap, nature will snap, and we start to now see it. We see, just yesterday we had the news that 84% of the world's corals are exposed to record temperatures and bleaching events. That's not insignificant. That is a third of marine life, 1 billion people that are supported by those systems. So is investing into that nature a good economic choice? I think it is. when in Davos this year, we heard a story of a food corporate, one of the largest food and beverages companies, who said, I know I'm exposed to degradation of biodiversity, the breakdown of my soils. What does it really mean? So they priced it. They went through an exercise of pricing that risk, and what they found out was that when they ran their cash flow models out for the next 5 years, they had no business model. Their equity story was completely eroded after 5 years unless they invested. So in that case as well, I think investing into nature seems like a good economic choice. And then we have the very big things like the Amazon. I mean, right now the Amazon is at 17% deforested. If we get to 20%, we're told again with the latest science from this year that that will turn the Amazon from a rainforest system into a savanna, completely changing the hydrological systems in South America, essentially meaning that all the breadbaskets fail. Supply chains get deleted, they don't exist anymore. But not only that, we have a humanitarian crisis like we've never really reckoned with. So is investing into that nature also a good economic choice? I think it is. So on the one hand, it's almost very easy. What an easy decision to make. It's clear that it pays. On the other hand, it's not that easy because we don't actually make economic decisions about nature at that level with those numbers. We make them in every single little decision we make, business by business, investor by investor, farmer by farmer, and ultimately hectare by hectare. And it's only when we zoom into that level of detail do we figure out where we're really stuck. I mean, we live in a world where the farmer, she tells us, I can't change my practices to increase biodiversity, because if I do, I'm at risk of not being able to pay back my debt burden that I need to pay back after the next harvest. The forestry company tells us, any money I spend on conservation is money out of the window because it doesn't add anything to my balance sheet. I don't get anything for it. The food company tells us, I do feel like I'm someone that should invest. I do have these risks, but why should I be the first one to recognize I have these risks, be punished by the capital markets for being risky, and then when I invest, why would I do that if the whole value chain benefits from just me making that investment? And then you have the investment class sitting there saying, Jamie, I hear you, I understand your story, nature is value, but please show me where the financial products are that allow me to put 250, 500 million ticket sizes into nature and get a return back. So that's a little bit of where I think we're stuck. It's in the middle of knowing that there is value somewhere. We feel it, it's evident, but we can't see it. We can't find it in our system. We can't point to it, and therefore we can't invest into it. And the good news is we have a solution for identifying value up and down an economy, and it's called a balance sheet. Balance sheets are those things we use at every layer in the economy to describe these are the assets that I sit on, these are the liabilities that I have, and this is the wealth this is the value that I sit on. So how do we pool nature onto those balance sheets? And now let me get a little bit technical. I'm going to show a chart. This is a little bit of the journey that we see towards nature really being on the balance sheet. And let me talk you through it. And if we look at this, when we go from the left up this staircase, we're building our nature balance sheet. We're creating balance sheets and creating value or describing value. And if we start from the right, we're starting to reward and starting to incentivize. So this is where we are right now. I think starting in the bottom left, natural capital assessments. This is the whole sphere of disclosure of the really hard work that our friends at the TNFD have done to bring us 500 companies with $17 trillion worth of assets under management to the point where they're now assessing their relationship to nature. We have these huge companies saying, what are my risks, what are my opportunities? So that feels good. That feels like progress. The second step is natural capital accounting. This is not something new. This has been around for a long, long time. But essentially, all it is structured data sets that describe stocks of natural capital, biodiversity, soil, carbon, water, and ecosystem services. And these are the things that allow us to point to the value. We can look at an asset, we can look at a landscape, and we can say, here is the economic value that nature gives to me in this landscape. I'll skip over 3 for now, because that's the tough one, and I'll get to 5. If we go all the way up to the top of the economy almost, this is where you have the governments and the regulators, where we need to be in a position where government decisions, subsidy regimes, direct spending encourage investment into nature, and central banks encourage investment into nature, capital adequacy ratios, stress testing. This stuff is starting to happen. It's not anywhere where we near where we need it, but it's starting. And the fourth step, coming down the ladder from the right, natural capital assets are priced in capital markets. We heard in January the Financial Stability Board said there could be panic in the financial markets because all of these risks might cause a tsunami of revaluations that would dry up investment, dry up loan books, and that's scary. But what that means in step 4 is that the companies that do invest into nature, that do invest into that value, will be seen as good assets. They will be invested into, and it will pay to invest into nature purely because you are a good asset. So what does it mean then to be in that middle box, to have nature on the balance sheet? Well, a few things need to happen, of course. We're on the left-hand side here, we're describing value, we're kind of pushing value up into the system. And on the right-hand side, we have the system looking at where that value is and trying to reward it. And in the middle, we have our accounts, we have our balance sheets, and we need, of course, repricing of our current assets that we hold, if any of this is going to hold true. But we also need a way to invest. And right now, we don't have the instruments, we don't have the tools that allow us to put money into nature and hold it on our balance sheets. We have lots of things lying around, carbon credits, which are great, but they're for offsetting. They are for causing harm and doing good. We have debt for nature swaps, which are also great, but they are slow. We have philanthropy, which is great, but it's very small. And we have biodiversity credits, but we don't really have biodiversity credits. So this is where what we are working on at the Land Banking Group comes in, and where we think technology helps us to play a couple of tricks to keep us in this middle box here. At the Land Banking Group, what we're doing is deploying technology. I mean, we're in the midst of a technology revolution right now with high resolution, Earth observation, bioacoustics, meta barcoding, all these fantastic technologies that allow us to very quickly and very cheaply now build natural capital accounts. So we can have on a platform the status of nature described hectare by hectare and through time. So we have the ability to index decisions now on nature. And that natural capital account now allows us to issue contracts. We can enter into a contract around those stocks of natural capital that we can describe in the account, and they can be, as we are trying to make them, balance sheet grade. And they can be, I'm going to get a little bit, one step again technical, but they can be balance sheet grade because they meet the asset test that auditors and accountants throw at us for what is an asset. Well, firstly, it needs to be identifiable. Can you point to the thing? So we just described the natural capital account allows us to point to the thing. It's this bit of nature. The second thing that has to be is controllable. It has to be a legal right that I hold, that I can transfer or I can hold. So that's why you have a contract. A contract gives you that controllability. And the third thing is it has to hold future economic value. And that, as we've just been discussing, is becoming a little bit more obvious and clearer to paint that picture. So now we have an instrument that you can put on balance sheets. You can put money into nature and hold that value on your balance sheets. And we're starting to see lots of companies using it. So we're working with food corporates where they invest into their value chain and their balance sheet is strengthened because of it. We're working with forestry companies where they invest into biodiversity corridors, more diverse planting regimes, and their balance sheet is stronger because of it. We're working with structured finance providers to have investment flow via structured finance products into these systems. And ultimately, we're working with farmers and with conservation organizations to help them get paid for the nature they steward rather than just for the crops that they deliver. So that's the big conceptual journey and a little bit of the role that we're trying to play. But where does all that leave us? I guess it leaves us with a lot of work to do. If any of this is to be true, then there's a lot of work still to be done. But I think it also leaves us with a lot of opportunity. We have the ability now to put money into nature and to have value back from it. And that, for me, feels like the foundations of a bit of a new economy. It feels like one where the food corporate can invest. It feels like the one where the forestry company will invest. It feels like the one where the farmer will get paid for the crops and for the biodiversity. And I think as we look around and we think about the massive change that we need, that system feels much more like a revolution of reason than a revolution of ruin, which we see in other parts of the world. Thank you.